Welcome to Bomberos on Fire, a bilingual podcast where we dive into the world of mental health for first responders and emergency workers. My name is Armando. I'm a firefighter, nurse, and paramedic for over 15 years experience. I'm here to provide you a safe and supportive space for our first responders and emergency workers. So join us on our journey of growth and healing, where together we will learn how to stay strong both physically and mentally. Don't miss a single episode of Bomberos on Fire on Spotify, Apple, Google, or even iHeartRadio. Subscribe now and become part of the community. Thank you for listening. Today's episode of Bomberos on Fire is sponsored by BetterHelp. It is not always easy to talk about mental health when it feels like no one around you really understands your situation, especially in a field that is taboo to talk about it. In my personal case, my family of first responders. We take care of everybody, but we rarely ask for help. Whenever you are feeling anxious, stressed, or just not quite yourself, it can be really hard to know where to turn for help. Well, remember, you are not alone. That is where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp is an online therapy service that connects you with a licensed mental health professional based on your particular needs right from the comfort of your own home. You can start your mental health journey with BetterHelp. You will be matched with a licensed therapist who fits your necessities in a couple of days. BetterHelp makes it easy to find the right therapist for you. The beauty of BetterHelp, it is worldwide, regardless where you are. From San Juan to Berlin, from Orlando to Madrid, BetterHelp is there for you. They have a broad range of mental health therapies available for you that might not be locally. And guess what? BetterHelp isn't just available in English, making it an inclusive platform regardless of where you live or what is your language. Once you match, you can send a message anytime, get timely responses, and you can schedule weekly videos or phone sessions, so you won't ever have to sit in a waiting room again. BetterHelp makes professional mental therapy accessible, affordable, and convenient, so anyone who struggles with life challenge can get help anytime, anywhere. To top it off, BetterHelp costs are based on your locations, preference, and therapist availability. You can cancel your membership at any time for any reason. I believe that everyone deserves the support they need, no matter who they are or where they're from, especially if you are first responders. As a listener of Bomberos on Fire podcast, use our special link betterhelp.com/bomberosonfire for 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp, and join the vast number of people who have taken charge of their mental health with an assistance of an experienced mental health professional therapist. Remember, there's no shame in asking for help, and you are not alone. Let's create a world where mental health is never overlooked, and do not forget to use our link betterhelp.com/bomberosonfire, and you will receive 10% off your first month of therapy with BetterHelp. And now, let's get back to our show. All right, perfect. Welcome back, my community of firefighters, police, medics, nurses, and everybody who suffers from mental health. My name is Armando, one of your hosts for Bomberos on Fire podcast. I'm here and delighted. I'm excited to talk with this person over here next to me on the screen. She's a psychologist, a mental health counselor. She's in New York, and she's also a board member of the COVID-19 task force.
New York City COVID care. Yeah.
New York, exactly. And before we start, I want to say thank you to everybody to listen to us in United States, Mexico, Spain, Morocco, which is new. I didn't know I had one in Morocco. The Philippines, Portugal, and South America. Doc, the floor is yours. You can introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. As you said, I'm Dr. Nicole Andreoli. I'm a clinical psychologist based in New York City. I'm also a member of the board for the New York City COVID Care Coalition. We provided free mental health support. Originally, it started to first responders, but it was open to all for the most part, during the height of the COVID years. Yeah.
Perfect. And to start out of the bat, I know you've seen an increase or a change in mental health pre and post COVID. But I'm wondering, for first responders, what was your main change or the thing that you saw, like, oh, this is COVID related to the first responder guys?
Well, I think a lot came up for first responders, particularly during COVID. You know, with any first responder, you typically see things like anxiety and fear. There's a really high risk of emotional burnout just from dealing with high stress situations and those traumatic responses. I think in particular with COVID-19, a couple of additional things that came up for first line responders was things like stigmatization and social isolation, right? Because there was this, you know, especially in the very beginning, there was a fear of, am I going to get sick? Am I going to bring this home and affect or infect my family and friends and loved ones? So I think on top of all of the stress and anxiety and emotional burnout that first responders typically feel in the day to day, there was this added element of, you know, if I come home, I have to completely isolate from family and friends, right? So their support network, there was this risk of infecting, which really can really take its toll. Yes. Also, I know, especially in the very beginning, those first couple of months of COVID, a lot of first responders had to face some really ethical dilemmas, right? There were some moral issues that came up because of the limited resources in, medical equipment, in protective care equipment. And for some people, it was making decisions about end of life care. And that really led to increased feelings of guilt and moral distress, and even for some people, like moral injury. So those were definitely, I think, some differences that came up specifically with COVID, as opposed to maybe the typical first responders experience.
Got it. Because talking about it, I have to make decisions on the field, because at that time I was, every time a respiratory arrest or anybody with respiratory problems, once I intubated, if I intubate, I knew they will be gone. And that specific moment on the COVID. So I hear you when you say that, we have to take decisions that will improve or literally kill somebody in the long run, especially with COVID. So that was an experience. I remember that those couple months, like a year on doing that. I wasn't able to intubate somebody sometimes, or I wasn't able to even reach a patient. And when I was working on that time, I got the bubble, the NBA bubble, ESPN facility, and we have to go through so many barriers to get a patient to go back again, and they have to go home. Thinking about my family, my wife is a nurse, ER nurse, so we both were literally changing on the driveway, getting naked and changing.
You know, as I was saying that's what I pictured, like the stories of people coming home from their jobs and getting changed outside, not wanting to bring in clothes that could potentially be contaminated, right, was the thought process at the time, to not bring them into the home.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad we went through that phase, and now we are a little more calm and collective, everybody. And in your perspective, after that acute COVID response, what do you see in the first responders after a year of not having COVID in New York City? What is the difference now? Or what type of mental problems you get?
I think there's been phases. I think there was a point where everyone kind of hit a little bit of burnout with it, right? And we became, and I think it was true for first responders as well, a little desensitized. You know, to your point, there was such an increase in the amount of deaths that were experienced. as opposed to maybe what your day to day was like at work the year prior. And originally, while that may have been such a source of burnout, you go into almost like survival mode. You're desensitized to it and you're just getting through the day to day. And I think from that, that kind of burnout experience leads to what we would call secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. And I think it led to a lot of compassion fatigue. This became something that now we're so desensitized to that we're just kind of checked out about it. We're almost tired of feeling the emotions. And I think as that continued, then that trauma starts bubbling up again, then you start to see first responders who are experiencing like a post-traumatic stress response to everything that they had been through the past couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I saw an increase of anxiety, not just the public when they call 911, in between us. We had actually, after COVID, a year after, we had 3 or 4 suicide on Central Florida, firefighters.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's the reason
it
why
makes sense given there's also, I don't know how it is for where you are. Is there like open and easy access to mental health care as you're experiencing these things and even after? Is everyone even open to receiving it? What's that been like for you guys?
Well, for us, we do have a program that can help you go through that. The problem I see on the first responder side, especially firefighters and police, is be open to talk about it because it looks like a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
If I told the guys on the station, hey, I feel depressed and I want to cry because I've been through so much stress and I've seen kids dying from COVID or even cardiac arrest, you will be pointed as the weakling.
Right.
In the majority, not what I work kind of, but in the majority. So it's not the resources, it's the fact that it takes a lot to us to open.
That's such a great point because the New York City COVID Care Network, which we mentioned.
Yeah. We are a difficult community to get in.
Yeah. And rough. I can tell you that we've had a similar experience. The New York City COVID Care Network, which, you mentioned I'm on the board of, we had originally started. So let me give you background for a quick second. Yeah. That network was originally started to provide free mental health care in early March of 2020, or in early COVID, probably late March of 2020, to first responders. That, especially at that time when everything was so unknown and just so scary, they really needed it. And what we found was that they didn't want it, or they weren't willing to get it. And this was first responders. We found, everyone from EMTs, police, and the fire departments through the hospitals, medical professionals who wouldn't reach out for help for those reasons. It felt like a weakness. It felt like something, this is what I do, so I should be able to handle whatever comes along with it. And so the network evolved from there. We offered it then to their friends and family as ways of how can we get the support out there, even if it's not directly. But that was definitely an obstacle that we routinely ran into, that the people who needed this care the most weren't willing to accept it.
Yes, and it's true, though. We are a rough crowd to deal with from the beginning. From our sense of humor to our way that we do things, like we get drilled in the head from the beginning that we don't quit. We never, especially between us, we like a brotherhood or a sisterhood or whatever you want to call it. We take care of each other. We don't expose our problems to the public or somebody else. So I can't even imagine in New York dealing with that, because over there's the mecca for firefighters, is FDNY coming from Orlando. So yeah, I imagine that's difficult to deal with. But since we're talking about that, what is one of the tools that you guys use in the beginning and now, the different tools you use now to treat firefighters or first responders or in general public after COVID? I mean,
in general, I think that the best approach that we found is offering a lot of it sometimes comes down to education, right? I mean, not specifically with trauma, but education around what are the symptoms that you could potentially be experiencing? What do they look like? What does that mean? What can you do to help yourself? And what else is out there as a means of support? And one of the things that we found with the New York City COVID Care Network that really helped with that was putting the information out there in different mediums, right? Because people were open to what they were open to. You can't force someone to meet with a therapist if they're not open to it, right? It's going to be minimally effective. So we offered group therapy, which was really helpful. We've offered workshops, which, did really well as a way of, if you maybe you're experiencing burnout, here are the signs, here are the symptoms to look out for. Here are ways that you can help to improve what you're experiencing. Here are resources of people that you can talk to if you're willing to do that. And I think it was a great way of like providing education, getting some information out there. And then, what we would hear back after the groups and after the workshops was, oh, wow, that was helpful. I didn't really think that this applied to me, but I'm seeing now that it does. And then it was kind of like almost like a baby step into opening up themselves for that kind of help, for that kind of therapy.
Huh. And which tool actually helped the most of the firefighters? I know everybody is different, everybody has specific treatment, but what is the tool that you saw like it helped more the firefighters and police and EMTs and medics?
The workshops, I think, where it was more of a group coming together rather than the one-on-one therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you have somebody next to you that feel the same way. You don't feel by yourself, the shame.
And I think to your point, it speaks to that, community, that brother or sisterhood that is within those networks. So it kind of made it a thing that, okay, we're in this together, we're doing this together. And that's such a great way to identify.
Yeah, that's perfect. And because I'm in a peer support team at my fire station. So we're trying to find tools, figure out a way to open people up so we can give them the help. Like when somebody approached me and said, "Look, I'm a dumb fireman, paramedic. That's all I know. But I can find you the tools. I can find you the person who's an expert, specialized on this subject."
Right.
And something a little darker. But how about talk about suicide? We have a lot of suicides in Florida, in Central Florida, lately or recently. What do you be your best tool how to approach somebody who had the thoughts? Because it's hard for us, even for us, to talk to one of my peers, knowing that it's in that route. How do you approach that? Or how do you?
Well, so a few things. First, I'm so sorry to hear about that because it is something that has become so prevalent. Just as a consequence of all of this. And I think along with the suicide, there's other like warning signs and risk factors to look for. And this is where some of that education is so helpful. A lot of times when the anxiety and especially the depression and the burnout becomes so high that it's unbearable, people are turning towards things like alcohol and drugs as ways to cope. And they could be real warning signs that there's something deeper going on here. And I think that education around looking at some of the really big symptoms of depression. Here's someone, they're sad, right? They're no longer doing things that make them happy. Maybe they're no longer reaching out to family and friends for support or just in a social sense. So looking for those kind of warning signs as this person is depressed, they have something that's going on. We need to get them some more help. And that's really where therapy can be really beneficial. But even things like it could be a loss of an appetite or they're eating more, right? A significant change, not sleeping or sleeping too much, like getting really lethargic, any type of, big difference in behavior and any change in behavior, whether less or more, is going to be a warning sign that something is going on.
Okay, so basically any change of extreme behavior, like somebody used to eat cake all the time, and then suddenly at dinner time he stopped eating cake and he goes to his room and disappear.
Right.
Like happening a lot of times. All right, yeah,
you see like those changes in appetite because a lot of these emotional experiences, especially if we're not talking about them, if we're not processing them, we're going to hold on to them physically. And so that's where you'll see changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns, changes in energy levels, more or less. And these aren't necessarily, I want to be clear, not necessarily warning signs for suicide that someone is to at that extreme, but they're warning signs that there's something emotional is going on. They're warning signs for depression. And that's really where you want to intervene. Check in with someone. Is everything okay? Do they need help finding someone to talk to? So that's kind of what I would suggest looking out for.
Got it. And I know New York is a melting pot. You got every culture everywhere. Do you guys have a different approach, for example, talking to the Hispanic community or the Indian community or the Asian or anything like? How do you guys approach that? Because you guys have everything there.
I do think that most, not just therapists, but, medical care providers, have become more and more well-versed in cross-cultural approaches to therapy because we are very diverse, and that is very important. I also think in recent years there's been a huge shift where we're seeing. I know in the fields of therapy historically it's been predominantly white women as therapists, which can be very off-putting to if you're not a white woman. The feeling that you can't connect and from a place of shared life experience. And I think in recent years you really have seen a shift in the makeup of the mental health field, where you are seeing so much more diversity in therapists, which has been really great. I know with New York City COVID Network and even at my own practice, making sure that we were very diverse so we could offer, a better match between the client and the therapist, because it is really important. And that's something that I think even some of our governing boards, the American Psychological Association, American Psychiatric Association have really made a push for too, making sure that there is diversity in these counseling and clinical programs and these medical programs so that we are representative of the people that we serve.
Exactly. Especially in my case, Hispanic community, with some of the guys don't speak any English. You have to speak Spanish. So that's the reason why I do it sometimes in Spanish, so people can hear me too in different language and hopefully reach more. All I care is at least someone is able to take these tools and actually help somebody or help somebody else. I'm glad. I did my work with this.
And to your point, there is research that shows that connection between the client and the therapist is so important for positive therapy outcomes. And for some people, part of that connection is based on, the gender that they identify or on their race or their ethnicity. And so it's so important that people have access to a therapist that they can really feel comfortable with.
Yeah, it's true. And if somebody wants to reach you in New York, what can go? Or the website? You got a website? You got an Instagram? I'll put it on the description link, but let's see who's talking about it.
So my Instagram is at Dr. Nicole_NY. And the website is www.drnicoleandreoli.com. And maybe we'll spell out my last name somewhere.
Perfect. I will put it on the description no matter what, so people can actually spell it. But yeah, thank you for that data. And talking about that diversity, because I seen also, not just in the firefighter community or police, the gender identity, all that's going on at the moment. Have you seen an increase on patients regarding that subject, or maybe policemen or firefighters that want to come out and they can, or I don't know how you guys see in New York?
I think that just where the world has come in recent years is that we're so much more accepting to people, identifying in a way that feels comfortable and right for them. So I definitely think there's been an uptick in even just talking about gender identity and sexuality than there has been even over, my short career. I definitely have seen that more in recent years than I ever remember when I was first, training and first starting out. And I think that just really speaks to the way that the world has changed. We can be so much more open. We are so much more accepting. And so it has given people the space to really explore that.
Yeah, to get that, because that can also cause a lot of problems too, because you feel like you're in the closet, you feel like you're closed down, you cannot be yourself, regardless of the job that you're taking. So yeah, I seen when
Well,
after
it's another
COVID,
layer
like
of stress,
a
right?
month
Not
after
being
COVID
able
passed, especially in
to
Florida,
fully
I saw,
recognize or acknowledge who you are or even
yeah,
fully express it. So it just becomes another layer of anxiety. There could be
yeah,
sadness wrapped in there, maybe guilt or even shame. And so if you're already in a high pressure job, a high stress job, you're already experiencing so many of these things. Here's just another thing that you're coping with on top of it.
yeah, and it's just not just the workers, it's just the patients too. I got
Mm-hmm.
called from patients that going through that crisis, literally going through a middle crisis about the gender identity and how they feel. And they
Yeah.
call us. We are not trained on psychology. We should train on how to save the emergency or
Mm-hmm.
take care of fire. But I just know basic tools how to keep you kind of stable. Meanwhile, take you to the emergency room or to a specialist. So yeah, I saw a lot of increasing of that cases after
Yeah.
COVID, and a lot of anxiety and depression, a lot of suicide thoughts or attempts, at least that I saw in the 911 system where I work in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible how COVID, how that situation changed basically the way we treat people now.
Right.
It's more holistic, I think, in my opinion, than just, in my case, treating uh, uh, hypoglycemic patients or treating just a stroke or MI.
Mm-hmm.
It's more holistic, and now that I've seen it, you've probably seen
Yeah,
it
I
too in
agree.
your
'Cause
case.
I think it helped to really shed a lot of light on the connections between the mental and emotional and the physical and how they really, they can affect each other and they could exacerbate emotional and mental health can really exacerbate physical symptoms and present itself
Yes.
physically, to your
Yeah.
point.
What do you suggest, right? If I got somebody, one of the guys that work in 911 with a panic attack, what tools you would suggest to us to help to treat that? Meanwhile, taking you to the expert. What do you
Mm-hmm.
one of your tools, or what do you say? Or
So I think for someone who's experiencing panic, there's a couple of things, right? There's physical symptoms and there's also cognitive symptoms. Physically, they're experiencing increased heart rate and shortness of breath are probably two of the biggest, right? And so I think to that end, getting someone to try to help them to breathe, take, long, deep breaths that's coming from way down in their diaphragm versus from up here.
okay,
Usually when I picture someone having a panic attack, it's kind of what you see in the movies, those really short breaths that are coming from up here in their chest. But trying to get them to slow that down, taking really slow, deep breaths that are coming from way down in their diaphragm is one way to kind of start to slow things down and combat those physical symptoms. I think cognitively, typically for people experiencing panic attacks, those thoughts tend to be very scary. Oftentimes, people that are panicking think that they're dying. They think that they're
yeah,
having a heart attack. The thoughts, they can be completely illogical or rational, centered around, this is never going to stop. I can't get this to stop. I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to die. And so I think offering the person support and maybe words of validation. I know this is scary, but I'm here with you. I'm breathing with you. You're going to be okay. Can be really helpful to kind of get them out of that thought spiral that this is something really dangerous and really bad happening right now. Because I think that's a lot of what kind of maintains the panic is that thought spiral. It's hard to calm down and take long, deep, slow breaths when mentally you're telling yourself that
yeah.
this is a heart attack.
And my job in that case, in acute case, would be break that cycle, or
Right.
at least slow it down the cycle until I
Right.
get to somebody who knows better than me.
Right. So thinking, keeping in mind, this person is probably very afraid. They don't know, they're having a hard time controlling what's happening in their body. And that's scary for all of us. And when you tack that onto symptoms of, I can't breathe, my heart is beating out of my chest, this is really scary. So anything that you can do to provide them with support and maybe a little sense of safety, I think could be really helpful in those moments.
Perfect. So here you go, guys. Whoever listen to us, at least you got something on the toolbox you can use to just break that cycle or slow it down so you can help out your patient. And now talking about your COVID-19 task force. Now you mentioned that you transform after COVID. What are you guys doing now? It's still the COVID-19. It's still
So it's not. The COVID network has had many iterations. Like I said, initially we had started just for first responders. We then had opened up to first responders and their friends and family. And then from there we had opened up to anyone who is in need of mental health support. And during early COVID, the first maybe 2 years of COVID, I would say, it was really great. We had such a huge network of, I have to tell you, it was volunteers. And originally we had about 3,000 volunteers initially. I mean, and this is everything from therapists, psychiatrists, nurses, yoga teachers, art therapists, so many different helping professions who were willing to lend their knowledge and their skills to people who needed it. It became a lot to manage. And so some of the iterations were, how do we make this more manageable? And also, how do we make sure that there's no way to vet all of these people? So, we had to, as we went through the iterations, we had to really kind of cut some corners and really make this something that, logistically we could manage. And as, I would say for the first year and a half of COVID, a lot of the rules around treatment were suspended, right? We didn't have a protocol for how to offer mental health services during something like this. Therapists typically didn't work from home prior the way that they do now. There was a lot of like red tape that kind of had to be ignored. And I say ignored in quotation marks, because the rules were changed. Right now, the American Psychiatric Association, American Psychological Association, the state boards made it possible to offer telehealth services in a lot of ways that weren't allowed before. And then as we've gotten further along through COVID, the regulations had to be tightened a little bit. And the COVID network was no exception. So as we got to the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, it was really hard for us as a network of volunteers to really keep on top of these regulations. And so what we did was we took our remaining clients and kind of found more established networks for them. This way, people that could really keep on top of, is everyone doing what they are supposed to do in the way that they're providing care? We didn't really have a governing body for that. And, I think we've done a lot. We've helped hundreds of people through, through the COVID crisis. But in offering longer term services, just wanted to make sure that everyone was in a safe and secure place. And that was something that was harder for us to manage.
Oh, I bet.
So now we're a little bit more of a referral system.
Okay, well, it works. Whatever, you have to adapt to circumstances. You have to adapt and overcome. That's part of who we are as a humans in general.
And what we've learned so much about, right? How to adapt throughout the past couple of years.
Yeah, like you said, the telemedicine is booming after COVID.
Yeah,
now you got BetterHelp. You got people like that too. You got primary physicians doing telemedicine, prescribing medications. They give you the email with the prescription. You have to go to the pharmacy. I mean, it's completely, now everything is online, basically.
Yeah, it's completely changed access to healthcare, which is great. People that didn't have access to certain types of healthcare, or maybe it was harder for them, it's really opened the floodgates and has made that so much better.
Especially for mental health, because it used to be a taboo about it. I mean, especially I come from South America, Venezuela. I've been in the States for 18 years. So over there, talking about mental health is wrong. Probably you heard it before. That's a taboo. You're crazy if you even mention it. You're crazy. You go into the Looney Tune house. And I seen the change and the perspective, especially in that community, Hispanic community, how we treat mental health. It's still hard, but it's way better than before.
Right.
And having the access online allow you to basically be in your phone, going to a place and have a therapist right there in your hand, which is great.
Absolutely.
And for you too, it's amazing too, because you can reach more people now, not just in New York City, just basically around the world.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that yoga teachers were actually in that coalition of people. That's interesting.
Yeah, we had all kinds of creative yoga and creative expression type therapists who were willing to offer services. There's a lot of yoga teachers who use yoga and meditation to help with, it's great for anxiety, it's great for stress relief, but there's some that really focus on trauma as well. And so it's just another way of working through symptoms and experiences.
That's actually amazing. I'm surprised. I heard that actually. I never heard that before, but yeah, that's actually, I might try, to be honest. I like to lift weights, but
and this is kind of to our earlier point that, not everything is for everyone. And so people have to find what they're comfortable with. And for some people, it might be something more like yoga or an art therapist or music therapy that feels more comfortable for them rather than maybe the traditional, sitting in a therapist's office or doing it through telehealth. And that's fine. You're recognizing that you need something and this is what you're comfortable with. As long as you're focusing on it and getting the help that you need, it's a good thing.
No, that's great. No, that's amazing tool. Wow. And I also probably you saw a lot of the changes in New York City pre-COVID and after COVID. And now with everything's going on, with the homeless situation that I seen that in New York City, how that impact the mental health over there? Are you having an increase of people, like fear of that's going on in the city? Because seeing the news and
it's not great. It's very sad what's happening in New York City with the homeless. There's a migrant situation as well. It's really, really sad. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, there is a sense of concern about safety. I think that at this point now isn't as much of where it was, maybe a year ago or, really coming out of quarantine, because the city, there is, people are back at work, tourists are back. There is a sense of, life back to New York City.
Yes.
So I don't think there are the safety concerns that there once were, or at least to the degree that there once was. I think there is though a sense of kind of helplessness because it is really sad to see and feel like there's, maybe there's not too much that you as one person can do.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I went to New York City 2 years ago after COVID was actually ending. It was beautiful. The city was empty. I can go anywhere. No traffic. No traffic. Everything's clean. Oh, I enjoyed that. I walk all over the place. But yeah, I know you mean. It's a beautiful city, and that's literally the capital of the world, in the sense of diversity and the community that is over there. But I'm glad that we can talk all of this things because it's not just mental health. To me, mental health is like a big umbrella, and you can attack it from every angle.
Absolutely.
That's why, for example, have you on the podcast? I have firefighters. I got police guys. I got a person who's a nurse, and she's taking herself ketamine microdosages therapy, and she's probably already have her first treatment. But I got diverse of people that you can attack that, like you said, anything that can help you as long as you recognize the problem. I think that will be the main focus of mental health, at least in the first responders.
Yeah, it's recognizing the problem. It's finding solutions and coping strategies they are comfortable with. But it's also, I think the caveat to that is recognizing that either this isn't working or I need more support. And then, going after whatever that next level of support for each individual is. And to your point, for firefighters with that kind of community that they've built, I think trying to normalize talking about emotions, talking about experiences, talking about this is what I'm doing to help myself can really go a long way.
Yeah, it does. It just takes time. With us, takes time.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yes, like everything takes time. Anything else you want to add before we conclude our podcast? I know it's a little bit early, but I know you have something else to do, and I want to give you time to get ready for the next thing that you have. And thank you. Appreciate for your time.
I want to say that for everyone, life is bumpy. There's going to be good times, there's going to be bad times, and it's important that we recognize and embrace all of that. It's completely normal to feel bad. It's completely normal to feel sad. that's the reality of life. We have to acknowledge and accept that. And hopefully through conversations like this, the takeaway is that everyone hears that and they're open to getting whatever they need to help themselves live their best life and to feel as healthy as they can, whatever that looks like for them.
Whatever it looks like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's completely true, and I agree with you 100%. Well, thank you, Doc, for your patience and the little time that you gave me. I appreciate it. With this been working a long time, and finally have a chance to actually talk. You're more than welcome. And if you know more people that want to talk about on the podcast, because to me, the more you talk about it or put a little light or shine on it, is better, because you have to make mental health normal. You have to make it a normal conversation. I'm one of those guys that I take at least one mental health. I go checked out once a year. The same way I do my physical, I do a mental health, just to make sure that I'm not getting to that point. So thank you so much for coming to the podcast. Thank you for your time. Like I said, I'll put your description, everything on your contact information in the description. Hopefully my listeners hopefully enjoy this conversation. If you want back, just let me know. Or if you know more people, I'll take more. And hopefully one day we can do it in person. I can go to New York.
Yeah.
Especially on the fall, because the temperature is actually nice.
Yeah.
It's too cold for the winter. I can't deal with snow. I'm from South America. I don't deal with that.
Neither can I, and I've lived here all my life.
Oh my God, I don't know how you guys do that. I can't. Even the firefighters, like frozen hoses, water frozen. I can't. No, I don't deal with the sun and the alligators in Florida. Well, thank you, Doc, for your patience and time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.